Well, ladies and gentlemen, another day in Retard-Danistan, and I must be honest and say that every day that I read the news, I feel like we're getting closer to the death of the ANC. And I, for one, say, well, this day couldn't come any quicker. But before we get on to the main story of today, can I yet again remind you that if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And if you would like to support the work that I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. So let's start off with the first news story, and this is around the assassination of Witness D, also known as Mari. Now, you'll know that he was linked to exposing torture and an alleged EMPD cover-up which triggered a national outrage. Now, the Justice Minister has now responded to his assassination and insists that we have not failed him. Yeah, but he's dead. You have failed him. In fact, the ANC have failed everyone. But as I said in my video, which talked about his assassination, the ANC is incapable of holding itself accountable ever. And this is yet another example of it, which is why I said in that video, for the Republic to live, the ANC must die. Now, the Justice Minister says that the Witness Protection Program is effective and that no deaths have occurred whilst in formal protection since 2018. Then this raises the logical question as to why so many of the whistleblowers in the Republic are not being put under witness protection. Now, the key truth here is that Marius was not under protection. But South Africa still has no dedicated whistleblower protection law, despite years of promises that it will do so in order to protect whistleblowers. So here's the ANC going, it's not our fault, but they actually have no way of putting people in protective custody, even though they say the protective custody is great. Now, she wants a review of all the live broadcasts of sensitive testimony, and that Marius's identity must have been compromised during his testimony. So opposition parties now say that the government is shifting blame to the media and the victim rather than fixing a broken political system. Yes, that's the norm in South Africa with the ANC. It's what I keep saying. Now, a new protected disclosures bill is promised in 2026, and this raises the question of how many whistleblowers will die before reform arrives. So let's move on to the next news story, and this is around the 90-day visa exemption for the Palestinian passport holders. Now, you will recall that I did a video on this, specifically around the Palestinian refugees who just suddenly arrived in South Africa, and also the involvement of Solomon, the leader of the Gift of the Givers. Now, you will recall from our previous videos in the last few days that South Africa's Home Affairs Minister, Leo Schreiber, cancelled the Palestinians' 90 days visa exemption, and their reason was cited as being security concerns. Well, we all have that concern when it comes through to Palestinian refugees. Now, intelligence discovered that charter flights bringing Palestinians to South Africa were being arranged by groups with alleged Israeli links. I mean, of course, it must be the Israelis doing this. I mean, it couldn't possibly be people smugglers who are attempting to profiteer on the mishaps of others, like they do right across Western Europe. In any case, they are suggesting that these organizations are helping individuals to voluntarily immigrate from Gaza. Well, then that's not people trafficking if it's voluntary, isn't it? So let's think about this for 1 second. Now, all these Palestinians have to apply for visas aboard their flights. And the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign condemns this as collective punishment, saying that it blocks desperate refugees from a safe destination, because they pretty much have to try to find a safe destination whilst in the air. Now, that's not because the countries themselves are somehow wrong in their policy or it's Israel's fault. It's just because people don't want Palestinian refugees, because generally they come with some pretty nutty ideas and they usually pose a problem to the host nation. Now, the EFF has accused the Home Affairs Minister of unintentionally participating in Israel's depopulation strategy and demands a full investigation into who was coordinating the flight. My God, they've stopped them coming here. So they can't be participating in the depopulation strategy when they said, we don't want them. Like, think before you talk. I thought you guys were supposedly the superior logic party. In any case, there is a degree of political irony in that we have a government who has made global Palestinian solidarity its brand, and by government I really mean the ANC. It's no one else, it's just the ANC. And that very government has now taken a decision that critics are calling harmful to the Palestinians themselves. Yeah, you really can't make sense of this story, but you know what you can make sense of? Well, the gift to the givers, because the gift to the giver, a lot of individuals was asking what their role in this whole event was. And were they potentially doing it for ideological reasons? And a video has recently been circulated on X with allegations around the gift to the givers. In fact, you can watch that video right here.
Guys, this is to say to gift of the givers. You guys are coming in our area and you are sowing division to say you're only going to give food to the Muslim people. You go like this, can you see? That is pulling out cameras on us because they're going to come from a far land, okay, to disrespect us. Ons het ook arme mensen. My mother does feeding. And when my mother does feeding, say picky uit as a Muslim, van us Muslims. Many of these people standing here, not even Islam, they don't even belong to the religion, but they need to see how they sow in order to get food. That's mensen is so wat kerk loop, maar hulle moet hulle siele verkoop net om kos te kry. Maar op die einde van die dag weet hulle behoort aan 'n kerk. We are not going to stand for that. Ons is moeg. Exactly. That track of hope. They must also put on their only hope to Islam, only hope to Muslim. That is what they must put on their tracks. Yeah, as you know, one Muslim can call you cause. Why to do it the way they are doing it? Because at the end of the day, if we need to say to every Muslim person, you need to become Christian before we give you food, what are we saying? Mensen moet nou wel 'n siele verkoop net om kos te kry by gift of the givers. So as jy 'n Muslim, jy moet by force 'n Muslim raak. There you have it, guys. This is what they do. This is what they do, gift of the givers. They choose who they must give food.
Now, I want to be perfectly clear that I can't validate the authenticity of that video. But what I will say is that it is the kind of thing that many individuals are worried about when it comes through to the gift to the givers. Now, moving swiftly on, let's look at the ANC and the SACP Tripartite Alliance, which I am really hoping any day these two just divorce and get it over with so that it is yet another party who doesn't want anything to do with the ANC, which again brings the ANC closer to death. Gwede Mantashe claims that the SACP's decision to contest elections alone is the SACP committing suicide by running independently in local government elections. And he warned that the dual membership may be revoked between the SACP and the ANC. Now, SACP leaders are suggesting that they may have to choose between the ANC and the SACP. And this is causing the SACP to have an internal war with the former leader, Blade. You remember him, he's the guy who supposedly was involved in heavy loads of corruption around higher education. Well, he called for a special Congress to reverse the election decision, though the current leadership under Solly is pushing ahead with it and telling Blade to do one. You love to see it. In any case, at the ANC's NGC, the SACP inputs were booed by ANC delegates, which showed that there was deep fractures in what was once the bedrock of the liberation movement. In other words, the parties aren't getting on, and this is leading the SACP to, well, just skip actually actively being involved with the ANC. So for all intents and purposes, we saw Ramaphosa insisting that the ANC was reawakening and was recommitting itself to the National Democratic Revolution and was reconnecting with motive forces. I don't know what motive forces are, but that's what he said. And he described how they were trying to connect with the poor, the youth, and the black middle class. All this at the same time when the SACP are basically saying, Futsak, we don't want to work with you because the ANC doesn't want to work with it. And the reality being that even Mbulula saying that the fracture between the two of them is likely to be real. With Mbulula suggesting that by-election wins will prove that the ANC is stabilizing after losing its national majority, and Don't worry, my guy, we'll be back up to 50%, says Mbalula. Yeah, that's not what the data suggests. In any case, public documents and midterm reports are framed as evidence of a new era of transparency. Because this is the ANC now saying, don't worry, we've got all these new reports and documents and we'll be better next time. And this is the problem with the ANC, is that quite often it feels like that abusive husband that keeps saying, I only hit you because I love you. Don't worry, I'll stop. I love you, baby. I won't do it anymore. And then he just keeps doing it. And that is what the ANC is, an abusive husband to the nation. And this can be seen in the latest national survey, which shows that South Africans' trust of leaders is now at the lowest it's ever been. Only 1/3 expressed confidence in the GNU, and another third has no confidence at all, with the other third basically just not wanting to get involved. In any case, trust in political parties is extremely low, with the ANC scoring the lowest confidence rate against the DA, the EFF and the MK, with the DA and the MK party getting the best support of confidence. I don't know how the MK party has got that, but oh well. But in any case, the report went on further to say that long-term trust collapsed in South Africa, and that between 2003 and 2013, half of people said that they just don't care about political leaders. That has now changed, that in 2025, 80% said, just don't care about leaders, don't care about politics because they're all liars. Yes, you can see how well we're all doing here, right? The reason for that is because of economic hardships, which are fueling distrust in politicians, with 54% saying that they lacked any form of cash income in the past year alone, and that 1 in 4 lacked enough food. So why should they give a damn about the promises of some kind of pro-socialist government like the ANC? Now, policies like NHI and the Expropriation Act are meant to be popular, but the politicians just can't implement anything. And there is a crisis of leadership with individuals such as Moron, the health minister, and Gurungwana, who actually has to pay for things, saying you can't just do things as you wish. Like, we actually have to pay for things. There isn't any policy appetite to actually do the things that they are trying to promise all these individuals who say they have no trust in the government because, well, their quality of life sucks. Now, unsurprisingly, the province with the highest confidence was, the Western Cape. DA's run the Western Cape. And KZN and the Northern Cape, both run by the ANC, they have the lowest confidence because in those provinces, well, the ruling elite, the ANC, has just ripped that province off blind. Now, moving on to probably one of our biggest stories, and this is around the AGOA crisis. Now, as you may know already, if you've been watching some of my videos, and this was debated prior to the US shutdown, remember that's now over and they've agreed their budget, well, the US was considering a 1-year extension of AGOA, and it's openly debating excluding South Africa from that 1-year extension. Gee, I wonder why. Now, some trade officials are arguing that South Africa has kept high tariffs and barriers to entry for Americans whilst demanding free access to the US, with the Trump administration saying that they have already imposed a 30% tariff on South African exports. Now, South Africa is lobbying to stay in AGOA in its current form, but Washington wants major concessions, and you already know what those concessions are. And you also already know that the ANC says, we will never concede to any of our bull rubbish communist ideas. We will have those till the day we die, and hopefully that's relatively soon. In any case, a US trade representative hinted that South Africa may receive special treatment, code for harsher scrutiny or exclusions. And this comes after the US boycott of the G20 summit in Pretoria and exclusions of South Africa from the next US-hosted G20 in Miami. US officials are accusing South Africa of racism and political hostility, claims that the legacy media and the president criticize as being political interference. Now, the bottom line is that South Africa's foreign policy, especially our anti-West rhetoric and our pro-BRICS positioning, is now colliding with economic realities in Washington. And even our pro-BRICS position is becoming problematic. And if you watch my videos from a couple of days ago, we actually have even Juju saying, is BRICS still a thing? Like, we're not really sure. In any case, what we can say is that losing AGOA could cost tens of thousands of jobs already, with the extra jobs that's already lost, with many sectors in the South African economy seeming a bit quiet. Now, some of the slack has been taken up by the Europeans, but not all of it, because you can't just replace an economy the size of the US. So do let me know what you think of all the news stories of today. Is Ramaphosa selling you on his new renewal, or are you like me and just really praying for the day that the ANC's demise comes really, really quickly? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And until next time, bye.